My name is Ruth Langley. For 65 years, I moved through this world believing that a quiet heart was a sign of a life well lived. I was a wife to a man whose laughter could fill a house, a mother to a daughter I thought I knew, and for 30 of those years, I was an emergency room nurse, a profession that teaches you the difference between a crisis and an inconvenience. After my husband, Cliff, passed and my own hip decided to remind me of my mortality, the quiet in my life changed. It became less like peace and more like a room with the air slowly being let out. I moved in with my daughter, Lisa. It was her idea, a sensible one at the time. "Just until you're back on your feet, Mom," she'd said, her voice smooth as polished river stone. Her house, a modern two-story in a manicured suburban loop, was all clean lines and cool grays. It was a place designed for efficiency, not comfort, and I often felt like a piece of antique furniture that didn't quite match the decor. I had known for some time that things weren't right, but I had mistaken the quiet erosion of my independence for the natural progression of age. I told myself that Lisa's handling of my bills was a kindness, that her screening of my calls was protective, that my grandson Travis's constant need for money was just a phase. I had learned to live in the space she had carved out for me, a space that grew smaller each day. But I had not yet understood that the four walls of that space were not built of love, but of leverage. If I had known that one cup of coffee could burn away 65 years of quiet dignity, I would have stayed in bed that morning. I was sitting at the breakfast table in Lisa's sunny, sterile kitchen, cradling a warm mug in my hands. She had just made a fresh pot, too strong, the way her husband, Mark, who was perpetually away on business, liked it. I thought it would be a quiet morning. I thought I was safe. "Grandma," my grandson Travis said. His voice was casual, devoid of any preamble, as if he were asking me to pass the butter. "Can I borrow your credit card again? There's this new graphics card I need for my gaming setup. It's only $5,000. I didn't flinch, not outwardly. Years in the ER had taught me to keep my face a placid lake, no matter the chaos erupting beneath the surface. I just said, my voice soft but firm, "No, Travis." That's when Lisa, who had been scrolling through her phone at the far end of the island, snapped. She didn't yell, not right away. First, she let the silence crawl around us, thick and poisonous, a thing with a life of its own. Then, without warning, her hand flew toward me. Not to strike, no. She wasn't that bold. But she did something worse. She tipped my coffee mug, deliberately and with a flick of her wrist, straight into my lap. The heat was a sudden, searing shock. I gasped and leapt up, the ceramic mug hitting the tiled floor and shattering into a dozen porcelain shards. The scalding liquid soaked instantly through my thin pajama pants. My thighs stung, a sharp, blistering pain, but what truly shriveled was my dignity. Lisa didn't even blink. "If you're going to be selfish, then maybe it's time you leave," she said, folding her arms across her chest as if she were laying down some non-negotiable corporate policy. "Either give Travis what he needs, or find somewhere else to live. We're not running a charity, Mom." A charity. That word hit harder than the coffee. I stood there, dripping, burned, and silent. My eyes locked with hers, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt, a ghost of the daughter I once held. But no, it was calculation. I was being measured, weighed, and found inconvenient. $5,000, I repeated, my voice a marvel of calm though a tremor ran through my hands. For a child to buy gadgets. Lisa's lips curled into a faint, dismissive smile. "It's not a big deal. You've got money. You've been sitting on it ever since Dad died. I don't even know why you're being so difficult." "I've been paying for this house's utilities," I said softly, the words feeling small in the cavernous kitchen. "And I've never once asked you to cover my prescriptions." Her eyes rolled with practiced impatience. "You're lucky I let you stay here at all after your surgery. Remember? You couldn't even walk without help. I've been managing your whole life, and now this." I wanted to scream. Not just from the throbbing pain in my legs, but from the raw, gaping wound of betrayal. They were never helping. They were positioning. Lisa's care came with strings, no, with ropes, invisible at first, then tight, then cutting off circulation. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't my daughter anymore, not really. This was someone who saw me as leverage, a resource, a stubborn old woman who had outlived her usefulness. Behind her, Travis looked bored, his gaze flicking between us, still waiting, still expecting the card. My hands were shaking as I grabbed a paper towel from the counter and dabbed uselessly at my legs. No one moved to help me. My breath was shallow, my heart thudding a frantic rhythm in my ears. Lisa crossed her arms again, leaning against the counter with that same cruel smirk. You either hand over the card or be out of here by the end of the day. There it was. Not a request, a threat. An eviction notice delivered with the morning coffee. I looked down at the spilled liquid pooling around the broken pieces of the mug. One of the shards had landed near my foot, a jagged little piece with a delicate floral print. A piece of something that was once beautiful and whole. Just like me. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I walked slowly to the sink, rinsed my burned hands under the cool, running water, and turned off the tap with a final, decisive twist. Then I turned to face her, my back straight, my gaze level. I'll be gone before sunset. Lisa blinked, a flicker of surprise crossing her features. I think she expected more resistance, a tearful negotiation. But what she didn't know, and what I had finally remembered about myself, was this: quiet doesn't mean weak. And some debts are paid not with money, but with silence and finality. The door clicked shut behind me, and I was alone in the guest room. My legs still stung with a dull, persistent fire, but the real pain wasn't from the coffee. It was from the chilling certainty that she meant it. She wanted me gone, not because she couldn't afford to keep me, but because I was no longer a compliant asset. I sat on the edge of the bed, my bed, the one I'd slept in after my hip replacement, the one Lisa had tucked me into every night at first, her touch then still feeling like a daughter's, not a warden's. She had insisted I stay with them, calling it a temporary arrangement. I didn't argue. I was grateful, stupidly grateful. Now I could see it for what it was, a trap, baited with concern and sprung with convenience. She managed my prescriptions, my grocery lists, my utilities. For convenience, she'd said. She'd handle my banking so I could rest. She told the neighbors I was too tired to socialize, when in truth, she never even told me when they came around asking for me. And I let her. I let her help me right out of my own independence. I moved slowly to the closet, my body aching. My suitcase was still on the top shelf, dusty but intact. I pulled it down carefully, clutching the edge of the dresser for balance. My hip ached, but I didn't wince, I didn't groan. Pain was a familiar companion. What hurt more was the profound silence from the other side of the door. No one knocked. No one came to check on me. Lisa had issued her ultimatum in a voice sharp enough to cut glass, and Travis had watched me flinch and freeze, yet they didn't care. Not enough to follow. Not enough to soften the blow. I opened the top drawer of the nightstand and pulled out an envelope I had hidden there months ago, tucked beneath a stack of spare linens. Inside were copies of my birth certificate, my insurance cards, a printout of my bank's routing number. I didn't fully know why I'd stashed them away at the time, but some deep, primal instinct for self-preservation must have guided me. Now it made perfect sense. Some part of me had always known this moment would come. As I packed, I made no sound. No sobs, no muttered curses. I folded each piece of clothing with steady, deliberate hands. I rolled up my small jewelry pouch, just costume pieces and one simple pearl ring from Cliff, but it was mine. Mine. From the hallway, I heard the low hum of the television. Lisa was back to her usual routine, watching one of those home renovation shows she always claimed I wouldn't understand. Travis was probably in his room, headphones on, immersed in a digital world, blissfully unaware of the real one crumbling around him. I zipped the suitcase and sat back down, just for a moment. My eyes scanned the room. The framed photo of Lisa and me at her college graduation still sat on the dresser. She'd insisted I be in that picture. I looked proud in it. I wasn't proud now. I was awake. The doorknob turned, just a fraction, then stopped. She had heard me packing. She didn't care enough to open it. Or maybe she was hoping I'd disappear quietly, that they wouldn't have to repeat themselves. They didn't know me at all. I sat there, my suitcase at my feet, my heart pounding like it did in the ER, waiting for a diagnosis. But I already had one. I wasn't broken. I was discarded. And that meant I was free. I picked up my phone and scrolled down the contact list until I found the name I hadn't used in months. Gerald Monroe. Retired architect. My neighbor from my old house. A friend, still kind. I hit the call button. He picked up on the second ring. "Ruth," he said, his voice warm and familiar. "Everything all right?" "No," I said, my own voice surprisingly steady. "But it will be." It was quiet after I hung up with Gerald. Too quiet. That awful, buzzing kind of silence that only exists in houses where love used to live. I sat back down on the edge of the bed, one hand resting on the handle of my suitcase, the other brushing the edge of the nightstand. That's when I noticed something. My purse. It felt lighter than usual. I unzipped the front pocket. No wallet. No bank card. No ID. My heart gave a painful little skip. I opened the second zipper, then the third. Nothing. My fingers started to tremble as I sat down properly on the bed and dumped the contents out. Loose peppermints, a packet of tissues, an old tube of lipstick. No card. No wallet. Nothing. I'd had it yesterday. I was sure of it. I used it to buy my prescription ointment at the pharmacy. Lisa had driven me. She'd insisted on holding my bag while I walked because my pace was slower. I thought she was being kind. No. She was creating an opportunity. Her voice echoed in my memory from months ago, so casual at the time. "Let me just take care of your bills, Mom. It's easier if everything goes through one account. I'll set up automatic payments. You don't have to worry about a thing. You just focus on healing, okay?" So I let her. I handed over access, passwords, accounts. I trusted my daughter. And now I couldn't even remember the last time I'd seen a bank statement with my own name on it. She had started having everything go paperless. Again, to simplify. What a fool I'd been. The words came up in my throat like bile. They loved my money more than me. I wasn't family. I was a line item. I walked slowly to the dresser and opened the second drawer. I kept a small notebook in there, the kind I used to write grocery lists in when I lived alone. On the last page, I'd scribbled down my account numbers months ago, just in case. I stared at the numbers. Familiar. Mine. But when had I last seen the card that matched them? I checked my jewelry box, under the mattress, even inside my old Bible that Cliff had given me. Nothing. They didn't just ask for my money. They took it. I sat back on the bed, feeling dizzy. The sting of the coffee had faded. Now it was something colder burning inside me, a humiliation that tasted like rust in the back of my throat. And here's what made it worse. I had let it happen. I let her become my keeper. I told myself she was helping, that she was stepping up. But no, she was stepping in. In front of me, over me, around me. I hadn't seen it clearly until that moment. Not when she told my bridge club I was too tired to play. Not when she intercepted calls from my bank. Not when she started pre-approving my Amazon orders like I was a child. She'd been locking the doors, gently, one by one, until I had nowhere else to go. That was the part that nearly made me cry. I wasn't weak. I had survived 30 years in the ER, the death of my beloved husband, and a hip that broke like fine china. But I had not survived this gracefully. I had allowed myself to be diminished. I looked at the framed photo of Lisa and me again, the one at her graduation. She wore that same smug smile then, too. Back before I knew that some daughters don't grow up to love you back. They just grow up to use your shadow. My phone buzzed. It was Gerald. A text. "I'm outside. Ready when you are." I stared at the screen, then at the broken pieces of trust scattered invisibly across the room. I wasn't just leaving a house today. I was leaving the lie that I still mattered to her. By the time I opened the front door, Gerald was already halfway up the walkway, a calm kind of urgency in his step. He wore his usual navy windbreaker and carried a sturdy canvas bag, as if we were just off for a day trip. He didn't ask questions. He didn't look me over like I was a broken thing to be pitted. He just said, "You ready, Ruth?" I nodded. The house behind me was still quiet. No doors opening, no footsteps rushing to stop me. That silence, it was proof. Proof they thought I wouldn't leave, that I couldn't leave. Gerald picked up my suitcase and gently took the smaller tote bag from my shoulder. "You got everything?" he asked as we reached his car. "Everything I still own," I said, the words catching in my throat. He opened the passenger door. "Careful with your hip." That one simple sentence of genuine concern almost broke me. Not because he was kind, but because I realized how long it had been since someone was kind without a receipt attached. The drive started in silence. I watched the meticulously landscaped streets of Lisa's neighborhood blur past, each turn taking me further from the house that had stopped being a home the day Lisa started calculating my worth like it was a monthly bill. Halfway through town, Gerald finally spoke. "You know," he said, his eyes on the road, "I saw you crying last week." I blinked, turning to look at him. "What?" "On the balcony," he continued, his voice gentle. "You were sitting real still, holding that little ceramic bird Cliff gave you." I didn't want to intrude. I didn't even remember the bird or crying. I guess I started, then stopped. It felt like I was living in someone else's life, a smaller one, a muted one. I figured something was wrong when I didn't see you at the library anymore. That was the moment I realized how far the isolation had gone. Lisa didn't just take my money. She took my routines, my friendships, my freedom to walk 2 blocks and drink bad coffee from a paper cup while gossiping with the retired choir ladies. She didn't lock me in a room. She just made the rest of the world harder to reach. "You're not the first I've helped like this, Ruth," Gerald said quietly. "Old folks getting managed right out of their autonomy. It happens more than people want to admit." I said nothing. I couldn't, because I was too busy holding my tears in like they were passengers who'd missed their stop. "I made a few calls this morning," Gerald continued. "There's a place I think you'll like. A senior community with independent units. You mentioned once you liked the one with the koi pond." I turned to look at him fully. "That place?" "Gerald, it's too expensive. I saw the brochures before. Lisa said it wasn't realistic." "Lisa also said you needed her help ordering your own socks," he said dryly. "Don't give her authority she never earned." That made me smile. A tiny, fragile thing, but a smile nonetheless. He reached into the side console and pulled out a slim manila envelope. "Start here. Just some pamphlets. Oh, and we'll need to talk to a financial protection officer, too. If what you're saying about the missing card is true, we may need to act sooner than later." I felt a thud in my chest. Not panic, not even dread. Just the sound of the truth landing where it finally belonged. "I didn't want it to come to this," I whispered. "She was my daughter." Gerald nodded, slowing the car as we approached a traffic light. "And I'm sure you loved her well. But sometimes, love is just the paper wrapped around the poison." I looked out the window. Somewhere behind me, Lisa might have noticed I was gone. Maybe not. But ahead of me, for the first time in a long, long time, I saw a gate opening. Not a cage. A door. We pulled up to the gates just past 11. Golden Pines. The sign was modest, no actual gold or pine, just clean lettering on a weathered board. But the grounds beyond it looked like something out of a life I used to think belonged to other people. Hydrangeas blooming in riotous color, a shaded bench under a weeping willow, and a koi pond catching the morning sun like shattered glass. Gerald parked and turned off the engine, letting the quiet sit between us. I stared at the entrance. "I'm not ready," I said softly. "For what?" he asked. "To want this." He didn't say anything. He just nodded. That was what I liked about Gerald. He never tried to fill silence with pity or pretty words. He knew some moments deserved space to breathe. We stepped into the main lobby, and that's when I realized something. The place smelled like lemon balm and fresh-baked rolls. Not antiseptic. Not sadness. It smelled like living. A receptionist named Leia stood to greet us, her smile kind-eyed and not too sweet. "You must be Ruth," she said. Gerald called ahead. "Said you'd be visiting today. Welcome." I almost corrected her. Visiting sounded so permanent. But I didn't. Because something inside me, a small, hopeful whisper, said, "Let it be." We toured the courtyard first. Gerald walked slowly beside me, letting me set the pace. We passed a small, sunlit library, a crafts room buzzing with quiet activity, even a yoga class for seniors. I watched two older women laugh as they struggled to roll up their mats, and it hit me with the force of a revelation. They weren't being managed. They were living. Choosing. Every room had sunlight. Every hallway had windows. No one looked over anyone's shoulder. No one asked for permission to go outside. When we reached the koi pond, I stopped. The fish glided under the surface, orange and white and gold, gentle and aimless, like they had nowhere urgent to be. I used to sit by water like this when I needed to think, I said. Before all of this. You still do, Gerald said. We sat for a while. I didn't speak. I just existed. For the first time in months, I wasn't someone's problem to solve. I wasn't Lisa's headache. I wasn't Travis's wallet. I was just Ruth. When we finally went back inside, Leah led us to a quiet tea room and brought over a tray. 2 cups, a small plate of lemon cookies, a brochure. Nothing pushy, no sales speech. Just a gentle offering. I held the cup in both hands, grateful for the warmth, and stared at the brochure. There, in print, was the thing Lisa had told me not to even consider, a studio with a kitchenette and balcony. Month to month. No pressure. Move-in ready. Don't get your hopes up, Lisa had said once, dismissing the idea with a wave of her hand. Places like that are for rich retirees, not people like you. I read the number again. It wasn't cheap, but it wasn't impossible. Not if I had what I used to have, access to my own accounts. A say in my own life. I don't know if I can afford this, I said quietly, more to myself than to anyone. Gerald took a sip of his tea. Then let's find out. But first, you file the paperwork. A financial protection order. I'll help. That word landed hard in my chest. Protection. Not because I was fragile, but because I was done pretending I didn't need protecting from my own daughter. I looked at the brochure one more time, then at Gerald. Okay, I said. Let's start. And just like that, I stepped into a new chapter. One with locks to which only I held the keys. At Gerald's kitchen table, I spread out every document I had left to my name, insurance cards, old bank statements, a folder marked Medicare that Lisa once laughed at for being so analog. And then a thin yellow notepad, the pages tear-streaked in places, where I'd scribbled down every suspicious moment I could remember. I know it's messy, I said, my voice apologetic. But I tried to keep track. Gerald adjusted his reading glasses, his expression serious but kind. Messy is fine, Ruth. The truth usually is. He flipped through the first few pages, nodding slowly. Recurring charges from online stores you don't shop at, a Netflix profile named Travmaster. PayPal withdrawals at 3 a.m. This is good. Really good. I sat across from him, my hands folded, my back straight. I didn't feel small anymore. Just focused. I had something they didn't expect, evidence. The bank card had vanished, but my memory hadn't. And now that I was looking backward with clear eyes, the picture was coming into sharp, painful focus. Lisa had taken control under the guise of love, but it wasn't love. It was strategy. Do you have access to a printer? Gerald asked. I nodded. In Cliff's old study. It's still hooked up to the old Dell. Then tomorrow, we'll scan these pages, he said. I'll connect you to a financial abuse specialist. They're discreet. They don't just handle bank reversals, they build protection cases. He paused, his gaze meeting mine. But we have to act soon. Once Lisa realizes you're not coming back, she might try to get ahead of this. Especially if the accounts are still under her watch. They are, I said. At least some of them are. But the title to the house, I trailed off. Yes. Gerald looked up. It's in my name. Lisa had it transferred before my surgery. She said it would help with hospital paperwork. Gerald blinked, then leaned back in his chair. He let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh of disbelief. Well now, he said softly. That changes everything. He stood and reached for a small lockbox on the shelf behind him. Inside was a set of official-looking forms, their colored tabs sticking out like teeth. You need to make copies of your documents. Every page. Get notarized statements if you can. List the exact dates Lisa made withdrawals. The more detail, the better. I nodded, already reaching for my notepad again. My handwriting was shaky, but my memory was a steel trap. Should I call her? I asked. Let her know I'm filing? No, Gerald said firmly. Let the paperwork speak. It'll say it better than you ever could. That line stayed with me. Let the paperwork speak. Let it carry all the words I wanted to scream but never dared. Let it bear witness to the years of quiet erasure, the theft wrapped in hugs, the smothering dressed up as care. Let it say what I couldn't. You tried to own me, but I kept the receipts. That night, in the guest room of Gerald's quiet house, I scanned every single page. I sorted folders until midnight. My back ached, my eyes stung, but I didn't stop. Because now I had a purpose bigger than survival. Now I had a case. And whether or not they ever apologized, the record would remain. For the lawyers, for the courts, for me. Because I was finally putting it all on paper, the truth they never thought I'd live long enough to tell. Lisa didn't know I still had the title deed to the house. She never asked, never thought to check. She just assumed her temporary guardianship of my life had become permanent, like everything else she had quietly claimed as her own. So when she pulled into the driveway 2 days later and saw a stranger standing on her front lawn with a clipboard, I imagine it felt like a glitch in her perfectly ordered system, the first crack forming in the facade. The stranger was a real estate agent, a brisk, professional woman named Carla, whom Gerald's connections had referred to me. I wasn't there, of course. I was exactly where I needed to be, 3 towns over, sitting on the shaded balcony of my temporary apartment at Golden Pines, a glass of iced tea in one hand and an assigned property reassessment form in the other. Gerald had dropped it off that morning. I didn't need to be present for the storm. I just needed the paperwork to arrive first. Lisa called me, of course she did. 3 times in a row, each call going straight to voicemail. The 4th time I answered. Mom? What the hell is going on? There's a realtor here doing a walkthrough of my house. Your house, whatever. She said you ordered an evaluation. I waited a full second before replying, letting the silence stretch. Correct. Silence, then venom. You're not serious. I'm very serious. I could practically hear her pacing on the other end of the line. You don't even live here anymore. What is this, some kind of guilt trip? Are you trying to embarrass me? No, I said, my voice plain and steady. I'm just reclaiming what was always mine. This is my home, she hissed. No, I said again, my voice calm and absolute. It's the home you've been squatting in, managing with money that was never yours. I let you play caretaker. That role is now revoked. You can't just throw us out. I didn't throw you out, Lisa. You told me to leave. The silence that followed was like a heavy snowfall, soft, but suffocating. She had no idea I remembered everything. How the deed had been transferred into my name under the guise of helping with medical paperwork. How I'd signed everything back then without reading closely, trusting her. But I did remember one thing I hadn't signed. I never gave her full power of attorney. So technically, legally, and morally, the house was mine. And now it was being reassessed, prepped for listing, protected from her. Lisa finally spoke again, her voice low and icy. You're being cruel. I didn't argue. I didn't defend. Instead, I said the one sentence that silenced her completely. You only miss me now that I've said no. I ended the call. Carla texted me half an hour later. Evaluation completed. Client, Lisa, attempted to interfere, but I remained professional. Strong potential for resale. We'll follow up tomorrow. Gerald called later, too. She tried to call me, he said, a note of amusement in his voice. Left a voicemail full of threats. Let her threaten, I replied. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of her anger. I wasn't even angry myself, not anymore. I was something scarier, certain. Certain that love without respect is just possession. Certain that family means nothing when it's built on control. Certain that even if I had nothing left but this chair, this tea, and my name on a legal document, I would still be freer than I ever was in that house. That night, I went to bed early, and for the first time in years, I locked my own door. Not because I feared what might come in, but because I finally had something worth keeping out. The front doors at Golden Pines are glass, heavy but elegant. You can see out, but no one gets in without being invited. That's why I didn't flinch when I saw Lisa coming. I was sitting in the community library that morning, reading an article on elder financial abuse that Gerald had highlighted for me. My tea sat untouched beside me, gone cold, but the words on the page burned hotter anyway. And then the front desk phone in the library rang. "Ruth? There's a Lisa here to see you," the receptionist said calmly. "Would you like us to bring her in?" "No," I said. "But you can let her know I'm watching." They didn't ask why. The staff here had seen this before. Children showing up only when their names were on a legal line instead of a caller ID. I stepped quietly into the sunroom, just to the side of the main lobby. From there, I could see everything without being seen. Lisa stood in the foyer, wearing tight jeans and a fury red blouse, pacing in small, agitated circles like a lioness trapped in a high-end showroom. Her expression was pure disbelief, as if the very air here had personally offended her. The receptionist approached her again. Lisa pointed in my general direction, and I saw the gesture, clear as day, accusatory, sharp. She didn't know I was behind the tinted glass. She didn't know that, for once, she was the one on the outside. I stepped back, just enough to stay hidden. Not out of fear. Out of choice. It's a power people like Lisa never expect you to take back. Not the power to fight, but the power to ignore. 10 minutes passed. Security arrived. Not loud, not aggressive. Just firm. A woman in a navy blazer and a name tag approached and spoke calmly to Lisa, who by now was gesturing wildly, her mouth moving faster than her sense of irony. I watched her point again, toward the brochure stand, the ceiling, maybe the air itself. Anything but inward. Finally, she turned on her heel and stormed out. The glass doors glided closed behind her like punctuation on a finished sentence. I returned to my seat in the library. The tea was cold now, but it didn't matter. Later that afternoon, Gerald stopped by. "I heard what happened," he said, shaking his head. "She came all this way just to be denied at the door." "She must have expected a different version of me," I said. "She expected the old version," he corrected gently. "The one who thought silence meant peace." He paused. "That version's gone." We walked out to the garden together. I settled onto the bench I liked best, the one with the ivy climbing up its legs and a clear view of the koi pond. A soft breeze stirred the leaves. Lisa had come all that way for something, control, maybe. A confession. A reversal. She left with nothing, because I had nothing left to give her. Not guilt, not permission, not even my attention. And the peace I felt in that moment, it didn't come from winning. It came from the sound of footsteps leaving without an open door behind them. I reached for Gerald's hand and gave it a light squeeze. "I don't think I'm afraid of her anymore," I whispered. He smiled. "That," he said, "means she's really gone." 2 days later, Gerald called me just after breakfast. "It's time," he said. "You still want to sell the house?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes." He met me an hour later at Golden Pines, a file folder in hand. Inside was the full title deed, my notarized identity verification, and a trust form, blank but ready. Ready to protect everything Lisa thought was hers. We sat on the sun porch, papers spread on the table between us. "She's going to come unglued," I said. Gerald smirked. "Let her." Unglued means exposed. I signed line after line. Print, initial, signature. Cliff would have teased me for the way my tongue stuck out a little when I focused, but this wasn't just a sale. It was a severing. The house Lisa lived in, claimed, bragged about, it was never hers. She painted the walls, sure. Bought a couch with my credit, yes. Changed the doorknobs, picked out tile. But the bones, the foundation, that was my name. Always had been. We filed the trust paperwork discreetly, transferring the property into the Ruth Langley Irrevocable Living Trust. Not because I feared a lawsuit, but because I wanted something ironclad, something not even a manipulative daughter could break into. By the next day, the title had shifted. Lisa wouldn't know yet, but the law would. And I had something else brewing too. With the help of the financial abuse specialist Gerald had connected me with, I submitted a request to freeze all transactions tied to my original bank account. Anything processed in the past 6 months would be flagged for review. The specialist asked if I had backup evidence. "I have 12 pages," I said, handing her the journal, documented with dates, details, and withdrawals. She flipped through it, her eyebrows rising higher with every page. "You weren't just being used," she said, her voice grim. You were being harvested. I didn't flinch. Because I knew. And now, so did the law. I returned to Golden Pines with an unusual sense of lightness. Not joy, not yet. But there was something like breath in my chest again, like I wasn't holding everything in just to stay polite. Back in my room, I pulled out the envelope Cliff had left me the year before he passed. I'd never opened it. It sat at the bottom of my keepsake box, marked in his familiar, strong handwriting, only when you're tired of pretending you're okay. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a letter, short, just a few lines. Ruth, if they ever make you feel smaller than the woman I married, don't argue. Don't explain. Just leave. You don't owe anyone the right to dim your light. Use what's yours and make damn sure they can't take it again. Underneath the note was a check, uncashed, for $10,000. I stared at it for a long time. Then I laughed, a real, aching laugh that made my ribs hurt. He knew. Even then, Cliff had known. The world could turn, even family. I called Gerald. You busy? I asked. For you? Never. Then let's sell a house, I said. And open a trust they can't touch. He paused. You ready for the fallout? I looked around my room, the sun streaming in, the koi pond sparkling, my favorite bridge scarf hanging on the back of a chair. Yes, I said. Because this time, I'm not reacting. I'm reclaiming. And that check? I deposited it that afternoon. Not because I needed the money, but because I wanted the world to know I wasn't done building. Lisa always thought she'd get the last word. She counted on it. Her voice was louder, her texts longer, her threats wrapped in guilt and faux concern. She thought silence was surrender. So when the letter arrived thick with a legal tone and official seals, I imagined she stood in her doorway for a long time before opening it. And when she did, the sound of a lock slamming shut echoed without me ever having to speak. Inside that envelope was the beginning of the end. A formal notification from the Trust's legal counsel. Effective immediately, Lisa Andrews is no longer authorized to access any accounts, property, or financial records belonging to Ruth Langley. It was short, professional, bare. No blame, no begging. Just boundaries. That's what drove her mad. She called me 7 times that day. I didn't pick up. The 8th time, she left a voicemail. Mom, this is ridiculous. You're listening to him instead of your own daughter? Do you even understand what you're doing? You're throwing away your family. Family. She used that word like it was armor, like it should have been enough to erase everything she'd done. The pressure, the gaslighting, the theft. But family isn't immunity, it's a privilege. And she lost it the moment she poured scalding coffee on my lap and called it my fault. I forwarded the voicemail to Gerald, just in case. Then I did something quiet but powerful. I mailed her nothing. No response, no explanation. I let the letter do what I never could, draw the line with ink and law and consequences she couldn't cry her way out of. Gerald called that evening. She got it, didn't she? Oh, she got it, I said, sipping chamomile tea from my favorite chipped mug. You can always tell when they realize the power is gone, he said. I didn't even flinch. Why would you? He replied. You've already buried the version of me that would have explained herself. That night, I slept with the windows open. The air smelled like rain, and in my dreams, I wasn't hiding. I was standing in the middle of that house, my house, holding a set of keys I never gave away. Lisa was nowhere in sight. No yelling, no begging. Just echoes. The next morning, I found a small white envelope slipped under my door at Golden Pines. Handwritten, no return address. I knew it was her. I didn't open it. I tore it in half and dropped it straight into the shredder at the front desk. Because this time, I wasn't curious. This time, I didn't need to hear her say she was sorry, only to follow it with, but this time, I trusted the silence more than her words. And silence, when chosen, is its own kind of strength. Later that afternoon, Gerald brought over a few papers for me to review. Updates to the trust, a list of protected accounts, and a few phone numbers in case I ever needed direct contact with law enforcement or the trust officer. As I signed the last form, he looked up at me. You know, he said, you've done something a lot of people never get to do. What's that? You ended the cycle. Not with a bang, not with a scream. But with a locked door and a clear name. I leaned back in my chair, and for the first time since Cliff died, I let myself believe that I'd finally come home to myself. It happened on a Thursday, just after lunch, when the halls of Golden Pines were quiet and the sun had cast that soft, golden glow over everything, like it always did just before the koi pond lit up. I was sitting on a garden bench with my new friend, Marjorie, our hands resting on the same folded quilt between us. We had just finished our usual chat about the upcoming bridge tournament and how none of the new ladies shuffled properly. Gerald was due to join us soon. And that's when I saw them. Lisa and Travis, walking up the curved brick path that led to the front entrance. Lisa's stride was furious and too fast, Travis lagging behind in that entitled, slouched way that made my stomach turn even before I remembered the $5,000 coffee incident. They were coming for a showdown. But what they didn't know was that I had nothing left to lose. The security guard, Doris, bless her sharp eyes and steady stance, stepped out from behind the front desk before they could even touch the door. I saw Lisa gesture wildly, pointing past Doris toward the back garden where I sat. Travis shoved his hands in his hoodie pocket and rolled his eyes. Doris stood firm. I didn't get up. Didn't run. Didn't even flinch. Marjorie glanced toward the entrance and stiffened. Should I call Gerald? No, I said calmly. Let her see me. I wanted Lisa to witness what peace looked like when it wasn't begging for her approval. She finally spotted me through the glass. She moved to push past the desk. Doris stepped in her path. Lisa raised her voice. I couldn't hear the words, but the shape of them was familiar. Rage, desperation, that choking cocktail of control slipping through her fingers. Travis finally noticed me too. His eyes met mine across the manicured lawn, and for a split second I saw it. Not guilt, not love, but panic. Not because he missed me. Because the money was gone, and I wasn't going to be milked anymore. Doris raised a hand, then pointed firmly back toward the parking lot. Lisa threw her arms up in exasperation. Travis muttered something and turned first. Good. Let the boy lead for once. Lisa stood there for another moment, arms stiff at her sides, her face pale with anger. For the briefest moment, her lips trembled. She mouthed something. Mom. But I didn't move, didn't wave, didn't rise. I stayed right there on that bench, holding Marjorie's hand, wrapped in the same quilt Cliff used to drape over my shoulders when I fell asleep on the couch during Jeopardy reruns. They left. I watched until their figures were just small shadows on the driveway, until the engine rumbled and the car pulled away, as if it hadn't once held my entire life inside it. Marjorie let out a breath. You didn't even blink. I smiled, a real smile that reached my eyes. I already said goodbye. They're just now hearing it. Later, Gerald arrived with a bag of scones and a small bouquet of flowers from his garden. I told him what happened. He nodded. They'll try again. I know, I said. But I won't. That night, I wrote in my journal, when they came with fury, I stayed with peace. That's how you know it's over. When you don't need to yell back. I tore the page out and slipped it into a small frame beside my bed. Because the next time they came looking for a reaction, all they would find is a reflection of themselves on the other side of a locked door.